Chapter 3. The trampled snow coating the road... Sorry. The trampled snow coating the road into our village was speckled with brown and black from passing carts and horses. Elaine and Nesta clicked their tongues and grimaced as we made our way along it, dodging the particularly disgusting parts. I knew why they'd come. They'd taken one look at the hides I'd folded into my satchel and grabbed their cloaks. I didn't bother talking to them, as they hadn't deigned to speak to me after last night. Then Nesta had awoken at dawn to chop wood. Probably because she knew I'd be selling the hides at the market today and would go home with money in my pocket. They trailed me down the lone road, wending through the snow-covered... Wending? Is that a word? Wending through the snow-covered fields, all the way into our ramshackle village. The stone houses of the village were ordinary and dull, made grimmer by the bleakness of winter, but it was market day, which meant the tiny square in the center of town would be full of whatever vendors had braved the brisk morning. From a block away, the scent of hot food wafted by, spices that tugged on the edge of my memory, beckoning. Elaine let out a low moan behind me. Spices, salt, sugar, rare commodities for most of our village, impossible for us to afford. If I did well at the market, perhaps I'd have enough to buy us something delicious. I opened my mouth to suggest it, but we turned the corner and nearly stumbled into one another as we all halted. "May the immortal light shine upon these sisters," said the pale-robed young woman directly in our path. Nesta and Elaine clicked their tongues. I stifled a groan. Perfect. Exactly what I needed. To have the children of the blessed in our town on market day, distracting and riling everyone. The village elders usually allowed them to stay for only a few hours, but the sheer presence of the fanatic fools who still worshipped the High Fae made people edgy. Made me edgy. Long ago, the High Fae had been our overlords, not gods, and they certainly hadn't been kind. The young woman extended her moon-white hands in a gesture of greeting, a bracelet of silver bells, real silver, tinkling at her wrist. "Have you a moment to spare so that you might hear the word of the blessed?" "No," Nesta sneered, ignoring the girl's hands and nudging Elaine into a walk. "We don't." The young woman's unbound dark hair gleamed in the morning light, and her clean, fresh face glowed as she smiled prettily. There were 5 other acolytes behind her, young men and women both, their hair long, uncut, all scanning the market beyond for young folks to pester. "It would take but a minute," the woman said, stepping into Nesta's path. It was impressive, truly impressive, to see Nesta go ramrod straight, to square her shoulders and look down her nose at the young acolyte, a queen without a throne. "Go spew your fanatic nonsense to some ninny. You'll find no converts here." The girl shrank back, a shadow flickering in her brown eyes. I reined in my wince. Perhaps not the best way to deal with them, since they could become a true nuisance if agitated. Nesta lifted a hand, pushing down the sleeve of her coat to show the iron bracelet there, the same one Elaine wore. They bought matching adornments years ago. The acolyte gasped, eyes wide. "You see this?" Nesta hissed, taking a step forward. The acolyte retreated a step. "This is what you should be wearing, not some silver bells to attract those fairy monsters. How dare you wear that vile affront to our mortal friends? Go preach in another town." Nesta spat. 2 plump and pretty farmers' wives strolled past on their way to the market, arm in arm. As I neared the acolytes, their faces twisted with identical expressions of disgust. "Fairy-loving whore," one of them hurled at the young woman. I couldn't disagree. The acolytes kept silent. The other villager, wealthy enough to have a full necklace of braided iron around her throat, narrowed her eyes, her upper lip curling back from her teeth. "Don't you idiots understand what those monsters did to us for all those centuries? What they still do for sport when they can get away with it? You deserve the end you'll meet at fairy hands. Fools and whores, all of you." Nesta nodded her agreement to the women as they continued on their way. We turned back to the young woman who was still lingering before us, and even Elaine frowned in distaste. But the young woman took a breath, her face again becoming serene, and said, "I lived in such ignorance too, until I heard the word of the blessed. I grew up in a village so similar to this, so bleak and grim, but not 1 month ago a friend of my cousin went to the border as our offering to Prythian, and she has not been sent back. Now she dwells in riches and comfort as a High Fae's bride, and so might you if you were to take a moment. She was likely eaten," Nesta said. "That's why she hasn't returned." Or worse, I thought, if a High Fae truly was involved in spiriting a human into Prythian. I'd never encountered the cruel, human-looking high fae who ruled Prythian itself, or the fairies who occupied their lands with their scales and wings and long, spindly arms that could drag you deep, deep beneath the surface of a forgotten pond. I didn't know which would be worse to face. The acolyte's face tightened. Our benevolent masters would never harm us. Prythian is a land of peace and plenty. Should they bless you with their attention, you would be glad to live amongst them. Nesta rolled her eyes. Elaine was shooting glances between us and the market ahead, to the villagers now watching too. Time to go. Nesta opened her mouth again, but I stepped between them and ran an eye along the girl's pale blue robes, the silver jewelry on her, the utter cleanness of her skin, not a mark or smudge to be found. You are fighting an uphill battle, I said to her. A worthy cause. The girl beamed beautifully. I gave Nesta a gentle push to get her walking and said to the acolyte, No, it's not. I could feel the acolyte's attention still fixed on me as we strode into the busy market square, but I didn't look back. They'd be gone soon enough, off to preach in another town. We'd have to take the long way out of the village to avoid them. And when we were far enough away, I glanced over her shoulder at my sisters. Elaine's face remained set in a wince, but Nesta's eyes were stormy, her lips thin. I wondered if she'd stomp back to the girl and pick a fight. Not my problem, not right now. I'll meet you here in an hour, I said, and didn't give them time to cling to me before slipping into the crowded square. It took me 10 minutes to contemplate my 3 options. There were my usual buyers, the weathered cobbler and the sharp-eyed clothier who came to our market from a nearby town, and then the unknown, a mountain of a woman sitting on the lip of our broken square fountain without any cart or stall, but looking like she was holding court nonetheless. The scars and weapons on her marked her easily enough. A mercenary. I could feel the eyes of the cobbler and the clothier on me, sensed their feigned disinterest as they took in the satchel I bore. Fine, it would be that sort of day, then. I approached the mercenary, whose thick, dark hair was shorn to her chin. Her tan face seemed hewn of granite, and her black eyes narrowed slightly at the sight of me. Such interesting eyes. Not just one shade of black, but many, with hints of brown that glimmered amongst the shadows. I pushed against that useless part of my mind, the instincts that had me thinking about color and light and shape, and kept my shoulders back as she assessed me as a potential threat or employer. The weapons on her, gleaming and wicked, were enough to make me swallow, and stop a good 2 feet away. I don't barter for my services, she said, her voice clipped with an accent. Oh, she's an accent I'd never heard before. I only accept coin. A few passing villagers tried their best not to look too interested in our conversation, especially, as I said, then you'll be out of luck in this sort of place. She was massive, even sitting down. What is your business with me, girl? She could have been aged anywhere from 25 to 30, but I supposed I looked like a girl to her in my layers, gangly from hunger. I have a wolf pelt and a doe hide for sale. I thought you might be interested in purchasing them. You'll steal them? No, I held her stare. I hunted them myself, I swear it. She ran those dark eyes down me again. How? Not a question, a command. Perhaps someone who had encountered others who did not see vows as sacred, words as bonds, and had punished them accordingly. So I told her how I'd brought them down, and when I finished, she flicked a hand toward my satchel. Let me see. I pulled out both carefully folded hides. You weren't lying about the wolf's size. Why am I switching accents? She remembered. Doesn't seem like a fairy, though. Seriously, I just switched like 17 accents in that. I'm really sorry. She examined them with an expert eye, running her hand over and under. She named her price. I blinked, but stifled the urge to blink a second time. She was overpaying, by a lot. She looked beyond me, past me. I'm assuming those 2 girls watching from across the square are your sisters. You all have that brassy hair, that hungry look about you. Indeed, they were still trying their best to eavesdrop without being spotted. I don't need your pity. No, but you need my money. And the other traders have been cheap all morning. Everyone's too distracted by those calf-eyed zealots bleating across the square. She jerked her chin toward the children of the blessed, still ringing their silver bells and jumping into the path of anyone who tried to walk by. The mercenary was still smiling faintly when I turned back to her. Up to you, girl. Why? She shrugged. Someone once did the same for me and mine, at a time when we needed it most. Figured it's time to repay what's due. I watched her again, weighing. My father has some wood carvings that I could give you as well, to make it fair. I travel light and have no need for them. These, however, she patted the pelts in my hands, saved me the trouble of killing them myself. I nodded, my cheeks heating as she reached for the coin purse inside her heavy coat. It was full, and weighed down with at least silver, possibly gold, if the clinking was any indication. Mercenaries tended to be well paid in our territory. Our territory was too small and poor to maintain a standing army to monitor the wall with Prithian, and we villagers could rely only upon the strength of the treaty forged 500 years ago. But the upper class could afford hired swords, like this woman, to guard their lands bordering the immortal realm. It was an illusion of comfort, just as the markings on our threshold were. We all knew deep down that there was nothing to be done against the fairies. We'd all been told it, regardless of class or rank, from the moment we were born. The warnings sung to us while we rocked in cradles, the rhymes chanted in schoolyards. One of the High Lords could turn your bones to dust from 100 yards away. Not that my sisters or I had ever seen it. But we still tried to believe that something, anything might work against them.